President Trump says denuclearization is a major takeaway from his summit with North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un. The president said inspectors will verify North Korean compliance. He said Secretary of State Mike Pompeo will lead negotiations to determine the denuclearization process. The historic summit has drawn a variety of reactions from people on both sides of the aisle. But there also seems to be a split between pro-Trump Republicans and more traditional conservatives. Never-Trump Republicans are viewing this summit as a disastrous moment, giving legitimacy to a dictator. At the same time, supporters of the president see this as a tactical shift in strategy to a decades-old foreign policy problem. Michael Graham is a CBSN political contributor, Boston Herald columnist, and politics editor for NHJournal.com. He joins me now from Boston. All right, Michael, in your column out Wednesday, you say the divide isn't ideological but cultural. What exactly are both sides looking for?
So it's fascinating because I spent years doing talk radio. My Twitter feed has a bunch of talk radio listeners, friends of mine, et cetera. But I also write for like the Wall Street Journal and the Weekly Standard, as you know, and so I have all those smart types. Last night, while the handshake was going on, you'd have thought my Twitter feed was schizophrenic because half of it was hashtag MAGA, look at Trump, look what he's doing. No other president could do this. And people really felt vindicated. Like, you told us he couldn't be president. You were afraid he was going to blow up the world. And here he is having this amazing moment of history. Then the other half of my tweets were, oh, my gosh, I cannot believe this. What's going on? And then this morning when we got details, this morning, I guess their time, when we got details of what was happening, and you saw how much President Trump appeared to be willing to concede and how little he got from North Korea, how weak the statement was, there was genuine concern that President Trump had really harmed America's broader cause by giving so much legitimization to such an awful person and getting so little in return. And watching those two sides fight, that is the divide that's in the Republican Party. That's the divide that's going to determine what happens in the midterms. And this story today just reopened that divide. So, Michael, help us understand, why are these two sides, you think, seeing this meeting so differently? Well, on the one hand, you have traditional conservatives, and maybe if you want to call them like the conservative intellectuals, people who write for the national magazines, work at Heritage and other think tanks. They generate the data that then you hear on a talk radio show that people use to have discussions. They are very unhappy with this from a policy standpoint. Some of the quotes I ran into: horrifying, disaster, and embarrassment, and I thought it was interesting. Ethan Epstein, who's a longtime Korea watcher, said that if all you want is showbiz, this was great. Well, the people on the other side, that's kind of what they really do want, is showbiz. They want people to see that their choice for president was a smart choice. And you have to admit, and I think it's important that everyone acknowledge, President Trump is getting movement with Korea that we just haven't seen. The fact that when he came into office, the Koreans were so belligerent, and now it looks very unlikely like there'll be any violence of any kind anytime soon. That is to his credit. But what I think, if you listen, you'll often hear the pro-Trump people talking as though they would rather give a defeat to Barack Obama and the Democrats than to the dictator in North Korea. And that's just a completely different way of looking at the point of politics. Are you trying to advance policy, which is the traditional conservative view, or are you trying to settle political scores and win a domestic political fight, which is kind of the motive behind the Trump fans? Yeah, no, that's a really important question. Well, you also write in your article, quote, for Trump's base, the meeting itself and the fact that Trump didn't botch it by, say, accidentally giving away part of Guam is a victory in and of itself because it was a win for them. So how much, Michael, does this meeting vindicate Trump supporters? I think they feel really good. It's interesting. I got stopped, of all things, by a radio talk show host buddy of mine earlier today, and he said, boy, a bad day for the Democrats. And I thought, what an interesting way to look at this. I mean, he might be right, he might be wrong. We'll see how this rolls out. It looks to me like there really wasn't a lot of progress, and there's not a lot here. But that was how he started. It was, look, you told us if we elect this guy, the world will come apart. And Trump fans love right now, if you follow them on Twitter or Facebook, it's a series of lists. Look what's happened. Record unemployment, more jobs and people to do them, economic growth, record tax revenue, progress in Korea, and on and on. And they really, after a year and a half, and let's be honest, Trump fans, Trump supporters have taken a few beatings in the press and in pop culture and have gotten called a lot of names on late night television. Watching him at this historic moment made them feel so good about their decision to vote for him, and they are savoring it.
Well, reactions to this meeting have also been mixed on Capitol Hill. Bob Corker said, quote, "While I am glad the president and Kim Jong-un were able to meet, it is difficult to determine what of concrete nature has occurred." So safe to say Congress also falls into these sort of pro-Trump, anti-Trump Republican categories.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting, too. Lindsey Graham, who has really kind of become a part-time cheerleader for Trump, is saying if there is a deal, Congress needs to see it. The Senate needs to approve it. And I think that's where you're going to start finding out just how little there is there. And, you know, if this is the beginning of a process, that's one thing. And if President Trump a year from now is able to show, look at these markers, the North Koreans have destroyed these things, you know we've entered some agreements that Congress should look at, then I think that will be a win for him. If nothing happens and he elevated truly one of the most evil people on the planet today in this tremendous showbiz style format and gets nothing for it, I think that's going to be a real problem for Trump, and his supporters aren't going to be happy.
All right, Michael Graham in Boston for us. Michael, thank you. And be sure to read Michael's full article Wednesday at cbsnews.com.